All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll kick it off. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Scott Plum. And for those that don't know, Scott Plum is president of Minnesota Sales Institute, and facilitates most of his classes taught. He started his selling career back in 1987, which is just a few years ago. So,
Yeah.
since then, he's been sharing his skills and techniques he's learned. And his goal for all of his students is to inspire growth and change in your presence and have it last and continue in his absence. He is known as Professor Plum and host of a podcast titled What Salespeople Need to Know About Selling. And he's the co host of the weekly podcast, Get in the Door podcast.
Mhm.
He published a book, Taking Off into the Wind, Creating Lift Out of Life. This book is written for the person who is a salesperson, the human being before the human doing. A salesperson of someone that has an impact on the experience and influence in the outcome. He has served in the past as the vice president of the National Speakers Association, Minnesota chapter, and has been the president of the Sales and Marketing Executives of Minnesota and president of the Professional Sales Association. You can find Scott on all the social media outlets, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And without further ado, I welcome Scott.
Thank you
Scott,
very much.
the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to know some people that are online. Thanks for joining me and joining us. I'm going to talk about selling as your reputation in action today. And I'm going to start off like I start off every podcast and every seminar and every workshop. And that is when I'm giving you my time, I give you a portion of my life that I can never get back. So don't make me regret it. So my goal is to deliver a lot of content in a short period of time. Luckily, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to go through and listen to it and watch it again and write down something maybe that you didn't hear, or even hear something that you didn't hear the first time. So let's start off with some of the consistent challenges that I want to address today. So everything that I want to talk about is going to be focused on these 5 areas. And that is that companies that I've worked with and salespeople that I've talked to have no competitive value proposition. They're also becoming more reactive than proactive. They really lack on measurable activities. What are they doing and what are they keeping track of? They have very blurred objectives. So what do we want to accomplish within a week is not really clear. And there's a really strong overemphasis on solutions versus uncovering problems. And what we really find is these 5 areas manifest themselves in selling on price. So you hear people say, I can save you money as a leading offering, which is turning your product and service into a commodity. So they want to sell on price. They're losing in competitive situations because they don't have a strong value proposition, or they're not talking to a perfect fit. They're talking to a misfit. They're exercising on distracting behaviors. They're getting into activities, but they're not productivity, so it doesn't support the goal. They're sacrificing profits. So they're not looking at a good product mix. They're not looking at extending some of the offerings that they have and really maximizing the profit channel with the different opportunities they have. And lastly, they're wasting time on unqualified and unmotivated prospects. So that's how the challenges manifest themselves in a daily or weekly time period. And I got to ask, whose fault is it? And I'm going to be a little hard on the company leadership and sales management right now. So if you're close to a wooden spoon, you just might want to bite down on it, because I'm going to start at the top. Everything starts at the top. So company leadership defines a sales culture every day by what they're willing to tolerate from the sales channel. Every single day, the culture is defined by what leadership is willing to tolerate. And here are 3 things that we can really start to focus on when we want to change the culture and elevate it to the next level. And the first is create expectations and communicate those expectations clearly. Reinforce those expectations on a daily and weekly basis. The next one is to create accountability. So when somebody says something, hold them accountable to it. If they don't follow through and they don't reach the expectations, you need to bring it up sooner than later, because you want to be able to work with people to be able to develop them in a short period of time. And again, if you're starting to tolerate lack of accountability, you're creating that very relaxed culture. And the last thing is you have to create consequences. So if somebody is not doing what you're expecting them to do, and they're not reaching the expectations that have been clearly defined, then you need to have consequences to it. And consequences have different forms. Sometimes it's related to money, sometimes it's related to promotions and other opportunities. And really setting the first thing is the expectations. The only way that you can really disappoint somebody is to not meet their expectations. So how can a sales team disappoint leadership? Is to not meet the expectations. But leadership really has to communicate those expectations to the sales team and do it in writing and do it frequently. So focus on those three areas. I think it's going to make it a lot easier for this company leadership and sales management to really work on creating a culture that really builds on a reputation. And that's what everything is lined up today, is to really building on the reputation. So I want to start with a quote by Henry Ford. You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. There can be great vision statements. There can be great mission statements. They can be nicely framed on the lobbies of offices and people can come in and see them. But if we're not implementing that and we're not actioning that, what good is it really? It's a wish and it's a dream. And it's not really in action. And that reputation that a sales force has represents the company and everything that they do. So ask yourself, what reputation do you want to have in the marketplace? What is your marketplace? If you were to write down 3 words that you would use to describe your company, that you would want others to use to describe your company in your absence, what would those 3 words be? And I got to ask you, are they going to be similar to other words, or are they going to be unique? They're probably interchangeable with different companies and industries, but they're not really unique to what you're really offering. So I really want to talk about creating something that's different and better. So what would really make a difference is if we add the words and apply them into a value proposition. We're going to create something that's different and better. Our world is different 4 years ago than it was. Is it better? And what's the difference? And only you can answer that, because it's personal. It's how it relates to you. The same thing with the prospects that you work with. Your solutions, when applied, are going to have a different outcome for them because it's personal to them. And that's how people buy, is on personal reasons, business reasons, and financial factors. But they hate to be sold, but they love to buy. But they always buy on what's in it for me. And we've heard that many, many times. They all listen to the radio station, WIIFM, what's in it for me? And we always need to position things as to what value it's going to bring, what the benefit it's going to be to them. But we also need to talk about the challenges that they have, because the solutions have to stick to a problem. So I use the word apply intentionally. Some companies define their value proposition based on the specifications of something. It's bigger, it's smaller, it's lighter, etc. But that's not a benefit, really. Value is defined by applying the specs into a benefit now and into the future. I think about the North Face store on Hennepin Avenue closed in January one year, and I'm like, January? It's the coldest month of the year in Minnesota. How can a North Face jacket close when their solution has the greatest amount of value because it sticks to a problem? Is people being cold. I don't think they were selling as many in July. In fact, they probably had a sales sign in their window during July. But the products became valuable based on applying the solution to a problem. So when we present what's different, our prospects decide what's better because it's personal. Prospects define value and decide what to apply. I really want to break that down, is the difference between specifications, the application of specifications, the buying of prospects based on their interpretation and their personal benefits, costs and consequences of the solution, and what does it mean to them. And it's really an equation where we need to really separate the problem and the solution. And I'm going to talk more about that. So here's a value proposition definition. A value proposition is a promise of value to be delivered, communicated, and acknowledged, and is also a belief from the customer about how the value will be delivered, experienced, and acquired. A value proposition can apply to an entire organization or parts thereof, or customer accounts, or products or services. And when we really think about creating a value proposition, we're really incorporating everything that we do. when it comes to addressing a problem, delivering a solution in a way where it creates curiosity and our prospects want to know more. So here's a question that your value proposition answers is, what does my prospect experience in the absence of the value my solution provides? What are the financial costs, business, personal impacts, and/or reputation consequences? So what is the pain that your prospects are experiencing if they don't have your solution? If you didn't have car insurance and you end up getting T-boned by somebody and it's not your fault, what happens? I mean, you got to go to court, you got to try to get money from the other side. You don't have insurance, so you got to hope that they end up coming with it. If you didn't have homeowners insurance and God forbid you had a fire, what would happen? I mean, the consequences are drastic when you compare a premium, the price, to the cost and consequences of what happens if you don't have it. And you go, hey, the premium's worth it. I'm going to transfer that risk onto somebody else, and I'm going to receive the value from it just by having the peace of mind in the event something terrible happens. So I mentioned pain. Here's an abbreviation for pain I came up with years ago. The P stands for problem, the A stands for attributes, the I is for impact, and the N is for numbers. So really getting the cost. When you can break everything down into a cost, your prospects are going to compare your price against their cost. The greater the difference, the greater the value. Think about that. If we concentrated more on the cost, consequences, and risk that a prospect has in the event that they don't buy from us, and we offer a solution and a price, and they look at the cost is up here and the price is down here, this is all value. And that's what they're buying, is value. So often salespeople get really caught up in the solution, they get caught up in the price, but there's no relevance, there's no context, there's no contrast to what that price is compared to. So if we concentrate on the pain, we really get down into the cost, the numbers, there's a great comparison. The greater the contrast, the greater the value. A great example of this is I went and bought a Windows 7 computer laptop many years ago, because my Windows XP was running really slow. So I went out and I bought a laptop, and I get home and I'm really excited, and I'm going to get my software and I'm going to load it onto my new Windows 7 machine. Guess what? It doesn't work. It's a completely different operating system. I had a problem. My computer was running slow. Did I really have all the attributes related to that problem? Thinking about an upgrade would be thinking about buying all completely new software. So guess what? I spent just as much on software as I did the computer. So really, what was the impact of that decision? It was kind of a bad decision when I maybe should have taken some money, invested in the memory, or upgrading the old computer so that I wouldn't have spent that much money. Did I really have a great understanding of what the problem was? No. Did I work with a salesperson? No. Did I try to solve it myself? Yes. Did I create a bigger problem because I tried to solve it myself? Yes. Salespeople can be such valuable resources when they're talking with somebody and they're able to offer a solution that delivers greater value because they have greater understanding about the problem, and they're able to deliver a solution that solves the problem efficiently and economically. So really think about getting all the attributes of a problem when you're working with a prospect, because if you don't have them all, you might be creating a bigger problem for the prospect, and the solution will not be the right prescription. It'll almost be malpractice because you're prescribing something that doesn't fix the entire problem. So a value proposition. Your value proposition includes your products, your services, marketing and branding, and your salespeople. Every company has salespeople that are out talking to prospects, all deliver and define the reputation of a marketplace. What is every salesperson's competitive value proposition in every situation when they're talking with a prospect? They can say to a prospect, when you work with my company, you're working with me, and I am not in any other company. I am working here. You are going to get the value from me of working here, from the company that's behind me and that company that I represent. How much time are we really putting into developing our salespeople so that we can make them part of our value proposition? They're definitely part of the value proposition, just like they are the description of your products or services, your branding, your marketing, everything is the salespeople. It's the person talking to a prospect that's out in the field. And as a company leadership, do you know all the conversations that your salespeople are having? Is it possible that they can have better conversations? And that's my focus today, is to really concentrate on the challenges, how they manifest themselves, and for company leadership to incorporate solutions either independently or working with somebody like me. So this is a bit of a commercial. This is something that I do, but I'm going to deliver the value as to how you can do it yourself if you want to. So again, think about a company ownership, the salespeople being part of the value proposition, and asking yourself as the owner of a company, what does my prospect experience in the absence of the value my salespeople, my solution provides? What are the financial costs, the business and personal impacts on the reputation consequences? So think about that. Try to put that into a number, and it's going to be very difficult because they're talking about a reputation. This is why PR companies make so much money, is because how do you fix a reputation? You can't really quantify that. How do you determine that? How do you fix it? How is it created? It's created every day. And working with salespeople, I say salespeople define and create a reputation. And they're out in the marketplace constantly. Pricing. So we talk about pricing, we talk about a value proposition. People say, so Scott, how do I price it? There's two types of pricing. There's cost pricing and value pricing. So cost pricing is based on the expenses of the seller has in the service plus a markup percentage. Value pricing is based on the cost, impact, consequences, and risk, the experience that the prospect has if a sale is not made. So think about that. When you're selling a service, how do you price a service? Are there hard costs involved? Are there fixed costs involved? Yeah. Are there variable costs involved? Yeah. Is it a cost-based model based on a cost pricing where there's expenses and we're going to add a markup to it? Or is it a value-based? When we're looking at the prospect's consequences, we're delivering a value and really defining a profit margin based on positioning our value proposition in a way that sticks to a cost, consequences, and risk that the prospect experiences in the event they don't buy from us. So putting that all in the context and contrast, and I'm repeating myself, but I think this is an important point, and we need to really change our thinking as to how we're pricing what we're doing, is based on delivering the best value and not the cheapest price. So problems. This is a question that I ask most companies. Every time I sit down with them, I sit down with company ownership and I say, what problems do you solve? Well, we create this solution, and I said, I understand, I get that. What problems do you solve? In the marketplace, what problem do you solve in the marketplace? Salespeople are taught and trained to be problem solvers when they should be problem finders. Paint a problem picture someone can see in their mind. Paint a problem picture that a prospect can visualize, touch, feel, see, feel emotions. We all have heard people buy emotionally, they justify it intellectually. How does the prospect feel when you're painting a potential problem to them that they may experience in the future? And I'll give you an example. Here's mine. Here's my value proposition. So business owners invite me in to their company to work with their salespeople that are experiencing long sales cycles, low closing ratios, a shortage of closed sales. Sales managers have missed revenue projections and lost market share with plenty of excuses, and business owners don't know what to do and where to start. And that's the beginning of a conversation and my value proposition as I work with companies. And I really want to concentrate work with. I said work with in there, which means there's a mutual commitment. There's a mutual goal. There's a mutual commitment to a mutual goal, and we work together. So when I take a step, they take a step. When they take a step, I take a step. If I'm working with somebody, we're collaborating. If I'm helping somebody, have you ever worked with somebody where your commitment's up here, up here, up here, theirs is down here? I mean, is that frustrating? You're helping them. When I started selling real estate, I'd knock on a door of a for sale by owner and I'd say, I help sellers sell homes in the shortest period of time with the least amount of inconvenience and the most net proceeds at closing. Bam! Eventually I got a listing. 3 weeks after getting the listing, I get a call from other agents say, hey, Scott, have you gone out to see that listing over there on Selby Avenue? And I said, no, I haven't. Why? He goes, that place is a mess. The kitchen is dirty. The living room, the beds aren't made. I mean, did these people know they're having a showing? They said yes to a showing. It's a mess. So I go over and I talk to the sellers and I say, hey, what's going on? You know, when we got the people coming to look at the house, you still want to sell the house, right? Yeah. And what's happening? They said, well, we listed with you because you said you were going to help us. We thought you were going to do all that. Oh, guess what I stopped doing? I'm not helping anybody anymore. I'm working with them. We're mutually committed to a common goal. That is my new vernacular. And I really want to plant that seed and ask you to consider using work with versus help. Some of my followers have heard me go on a rant about this. And if you go to my YouTube channel, you can watch more than one video on it. But stop helping people. I know that doesn't sound very Minnesota nice, but it's true. Stop helping people. So problem ownership. So in a value proposition that I shared with you, I covered owners not knowing where to start. I covered management, missing revenue projections and lost market shares and plenty of excuses. And I talked about salespeople, long sales cycles, low closing ratios, and a lack of closed sales. So when you're thinking about who you're talking to in your value proposition, and this presentation has multiple owners in it. It has owners or roles, owners, managers, salespeople. So my value proposition has to appeal to everybody because each of them have different issues that they struggle with. So think about that in your value proposition. So let's recap so far what we've covered. The value proposition is the foundation of delivering value in a competitive marketplace. So it deals with your products and your services. We also talked about company leadership and sales management defining the culture by what they're willing to tolerate, which is the salespeople. So we've covered both of those in a value proposition. And next, I want to talk about developing a sales team. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. But again, we can watch the video again. So being proactive versus reactive. What is a perfect fit? Looking back at a perfect client, what are 3 attributes that you would use to describe a perfect fit? Too often, salespeople are waiting for the phone to ring. They're waiting for somebody to call them when they should be calling prospects. If we want to have a reputation in the marketplace of bringing solutions to perfect fit prospects, and we're going to be proactive on that, that's our reputation. So when we're bringing a solution to somebody and we've got a reputation of finding problems, working with business owners, and other people involved in the decision-making process, we have the reputation of being a resource. We have a trusted advisor reputation, which I think we've all heard and we really strive to be. And salespeople strive to be that trusted resource, that trusted advisor. Also, what is a perfect week? This is a question I ask salespeople every time. Every time I go and work with a team, I get invited in. First thing I do is I sit down with each individual sales rep and I go, tell me about a perfect week. And they go, well, it depends. I go, on what? It depends on what? I mean, well, it depends on the problems that come up. It depends on who calls me. It depends on, wait a minute. Who's in charge of your time? Do we have a goal list where we're working on, or is somebody creating a to-do list for us? Are we creating activities, but are our activities productivity? Our productivity supports a goal list. It says, I need to accomplish these things in a week. This is a perfect week. I need to make sure that I accomplish this stuff. If I don't, I'm going to fall behind from my goals, and I'm going to be distracted by stuff that's not going to generate the best income, the best use of my time, and I'm going to get off course. So every day you're making time trades. Are you making good time trades? Are you making good trades? At the end of this week, ask yourself, did I make a good time trade with how I spent my time? I spent my time because I'm not getting it back. Or did I invest my time, which means I'm going to get a greater return in the future? So think about that. Are you spending time or investing time? And are we really building a proactive leadership in the marketplace reputation? Another thing, what are we measuring? What are you measuring? You cannot manage what you do not measure per week. I will add per week. Measure every single week. You cannot measure months. You cannot measure quarters. It's too late. That time is gone. If you're off course and you want to go 1 degree every single day, think about that. Think about that. 90 days, 90 degrees off. I mean, That's 1 degree a day. If you need to fix a problem, you need to fix it within a week, because that problem accumulates and it gets worse. And the solution ends up becoming harder to apply. And the behavior modification that salespeople need to apply to get a different result becomes harder to adopt. And what happens when we try to change habits? It's nearly impossible. We know that. We get into complacency. We get into our comfort zone, and it's so tough to get out of our comfort zone. Where are we most comfortable? How much time do we spend there? Really? How much time do we spend there? When I was selling real estate, where was I most comfortable? In the office. My broker came by and said, hey, Scott, I got news for you. Nobody in the office is going to buy anything from you. You got to get out of the office. So I had to get out of the office. I had to get out of my comfort zone. But the comfort zone and complacency can really dull your sales skills. If you want to see how hard it is to adopt new sales skills, look how easy it was to dull them over time by not constantly using them and not constantly learning and evolving as the marketplace changes. So here are some examples to measure. How many new or existing conversations are you having? Are they incoming calls or outgoing calls? How many appointments are you going on? How many proposals are you doing? How many proposals are you getting to commitments? You got to measure the steps in the sales process, know where the kink in the hose is. Companies invite me and say, hey, Scott, can you come in and talk to my sales team? I got a closing problem. I come in, talk to the sales team, I go back to the company leadership, and I say, you don't have a closing problem, you have an opening problem. Your salespeople are not getting in front of enough people. In fact, they're not getting in front of enough qualified people because they have no idea what a perfect fit is. What's a perfect fit? I don't know, somebody that buys and the check clears. That's not a perfect fit. That's a distraction, and you took an order from somebody, and thank God the check cleared. That's not a perfect fit. Go after, be proactive in a perfect fit. So what's the source of your leads? What's your lead mix? Think about the reader in the newspaper cancel printing. You know why they cancel printing? There's nobody running ads anymore. You know why? Because there's no concert venue anymore. Think about that. If that was the only thing that they were advertising, concert venues dried up, guess what? Your publication is out of business. Imagine if you ran a payroll company right now and you were selling just to restaurants. Out of business. Bam! You cannot concentrate. You cannot make one industry over 20 or 25% of your revenue. You need to diversify. So get a lead mix as to where your leads come in so that you've got a balanced mix. And when one increases because the other one decreases, you've got the time to be able to service everybody. Entry versus enterprise solutions. So sometimes we've got an entry solution, and then we got enterprise solutions. So think about that. And then diversity of industries, like I mentioned earlier. Objectives. What are your objectives? Every week you're performing activities. From those activities, what objectives do you want to achieve? Here's a great sales force. Does what they can do, activity, productivity, and what they should do, which is reaching the objective. Here's the example to think about in your mind. Foot on the gas, hands on the wheel. The hands on the wheel control where the car is going. Foot on the gas is selling every single day. You're busy. You're doing the activities that you should be doing when you're a salesperson. You're making the prospecting calls. You're delivering the presentations, etc. What are the objectives? How many do we want to get in that particular industry? How many do we want to get in that geographic? How many do we, what area? 3M in the past has looked at, we want 25% of our revenue to come from products that were created within the last 5 years. What's the one word that describes 3M? Innovation. Does that value proposition, that objective match innovation? Certainly does. 25% of the revenue within products generated within the last 5 years. Innovation. Reputation. See how they really work together. So guess what the marketing team and the sales team do is they go after prospects with products that fit a problem, solve a problem that have been created within the last 5 years. So different products, different markets. Here's our learning objectives. I just want to repeat and make sure that we've covered everything. Have we covered a competitive value proposition? different ways we've done that. Reactive versus proactive. We've done that. Measurable activities. We've created a list of things that we want to keep track of. Blurred objectives. Foot on the gas, hands on the wheel. What do we want to accomplish in that week or that month? And then overemphasis on solutions versus uncovering problems. Salespeople are out there being a problem solver when they should be a problem finder. So these don't match up exactly. You can look at some of the manifestations and you can see the challenges as being more than one challenge as to how it's manifested. So selling on price. How many of us have ever gotten a LinkedIn invite from somebody that we've accepted, and the next thing you know, we get a message from them about the health and wellness and weight loss? Is there a problem? Whose problem? Are they going to help us? What makes them think we have a problem? We don't have a problem. Does their solution have any value? No value at all. In fact, we're offended by it. It's like, who are you talking to? That was our discussion in our breakout group. So losing in competitive situations. If we're not talking to a perfect fit, we're talking to a misfit. Guess what? We're not going to win because our value proposition doesn't represent a perfect fit. And when we don't win or we accept it, does it sacrifice our profits? It can, and it can. Oh, man, if you've ever looked at some of those misfits and how much they've cost you, you don't want to know. I'm telling you, you don't want to know. So we exercise distracting behavior. We're reactive versus proactive. We don't know what a perfect fit is. We don't know what a perfect week is. So now we're not focusing on what we want to accomplish when it comes to the behavior that we want to achieve within that week. Sacrificing profits. I talked about that a little bit earlier, but wasting time on unqualified prospects that are not motivated to change. If we don't uncover a problem, if we don't uncover the cost and consequences of inaction, everybody is dealing with inaction. That's our main competitor, is inaction. We compete with inaction. Customers, clients, prospects doing nothing or doing it themselves. But in most cases, we're going with another company. They're doing nothing. And that's when we're wasting time with somebody that's not willing to make a change. So here's a perfect approach. Number one, stop helping people. I think I've talked about that enough. When we're helping people, we're assumptive, thinking that they have a problem that they don't admit to. We can't help somebody if they don't think they have a problem. We can work with them if they acknowledge they have a problem and work together. Common goal, mutual commitment. Prospects hate salespeople that want to take control. So don't take control. It's number one fear. Is a salesperson coming in and taking control from a prospect? How do prospects prevent that from happening? They don't share information with you. How do you love working with those people that don't tell you anything? You can't do anything. You can't solve anything. You can't work with them on anything because they don't talk. Give 3 scenarios of problems that you solve in the marketplace. So a lot of my prospects hire me because I deal with this, this, and this. Can you relate to any of those? Really? Which one? Really, could you give me an example? How long has it been a problem? Who else have you talked to try to fix it? What do you suppose it's costed you? What would you like to accomplish next in our conversations? Do you want to talk about working together on that? Yeah, how do you work with companies like that? It's a great question. How do you work with companies like that? I'll get to that later. So go out and be a problem finder, not a problem solver. Stop leading with price and turning your product into a commodity. How many people walk in to a company, they're selling energy, they're selling solar, they're selling LED, they go up to the receptionist and say, who's in charge of facilities around here? I can save you 24% on your electric bills. You might as well go in and punch the facilities guy in the mouth because you're just insulted him that he doesn't know how to run the joint. Why do we want to insult people like that? They get defensive. They don't want to talk to us. They don't want to share information with us. How can we sell something if we're going to go in and insult them and say that we're going to solve something that they don't even know they have a problem with, and it's all going to be based on price? That's a commodity. Uncover the cost, consequences, and risk when you're working with somebody because your price has to stick to a cost to have value. Cost minus price equals value. Your goal, keep this in mind, this is very important. Your goal is to lead to the solution, not lead with the solution. If you keep that in mind, you are going to have some amazing conversations with your prospects. So how do I work with companies? What a great question. I brought that up earlier. So leadership, I work with them on consulting and really working on their reputation. I listed some other things too. Management, I work with coaching, sales management to really create experiences so that salespeople go out and create experiences with their prospects. How do I work with salespeople? By training them to create advocates. Imagine if your goal as a salesperson was to go out there and create a prospect and a client and a customer that's an advocate for you, that goes out and is so happy they bought from you, they want to tell everybody that they know about you and send you all kinds of referrals. And you can call that person once a month and just clean them up on the referrals and the list of leads that they want to give you. So ownership is reputation. Management is creating experiences that salespeople go out into the marketplace so that salespeople create customer and client advocates. That's how I work with companies. So your sales team represents your reputation and is the foundation to your value proposition. I want to start wrapping it up with a quote by Anthony Iannarino, wrote the book, The Only Sales Guy You Only Need. Great book. He says, the recurring problem in generating and capturing new opportunities seems to fall into one of two categories. First is the lack of relevance, something that plagues salespeople who have not adopted a modern sales approach. The second is the lack of agility necessary to deal with sales conversations that a complex and nonlinear marketplace creates every single day. I want to mention my podcast Rob did. If you like this session, I got 2 topics that I think you're really going to like. Reasons sales departments fail in 3 complete opposites. Search Professor Plum in where you get your podcast and you'll be able to find that. I also created a book called Taking Off in the Wind. You can buy that on my website at mnsales.com. I invite your LinkedIn requests, so please send me a LinkedIn request. I offer a free newsletter. Feel free to call me anytime too, 612-789-5700. And thank you. So I will turn it back to you, Rob, and we've got about 10 minutes if we're going to wrap it up at the top of the hour.
How tired are you right now?
Oh, I love this stuff. This gives me energy. This is my calling. I'm grateful that you invited me to do this, and I had to do it this format so that I feel better about myself. So thanks for, I feel better about myself instead of sharing my screen, you know? So,
Well, good.
Thanks. Did I leave anything out? I don't know.
I have 2.5 pages of notes.
Oh my.
And some of it is a good refresher because I've heard some of this before from you.
Right.
But so many, the problem solver versus problem finders. And I love time trades, the spending versus investing time. It goes on and on and on. So
great.
I
want to mention one more thing.
Yeah.
If you like the slides, if you go to my website, you can get the slides. I didn't want to tell you before the session because I thought you'd just watch those and you'd be ahead of me. So go to mnsales.com, look under recent posts. You'll see selling is your reputation in action. Enter in your email address. You'll get the slides. They'll be the next screen. They're all yours. So if you couldn't read the screen, I apologize. I tried to get a lot of information in there. They're on the slides.
No, that's a great, generous offer, and very appreciated too. I think that there was so much information. This is something we could review monthly, dare I say monthly at the very least, to keep on making sure we stay on track. I loved your analogy that if you're not tracking things weekly, every week you're 1 degree off, you're 90 degrees off by 90 days or 90 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that hurts. Oh God, I can feel the pain.
Well, there's so much here that we can go on, but nothing came through, but I do want to open up. If folks, you want to take yourself off mute, if you have a question for Scott, we got about 6 minutes left. So I'll let the audience go. And while you're doing that, Scott, if you could give us one lesson as salespeople that we should hold on to, what would be the biggest thing that you would tell us to keep in mind? I would ask you to keep in mind, what are the 3 questions you want prospects to use to describe you in your absence? And think about that. You know, just like a company, I asked the company leadership, what are 3 words that you want prospects to use to describe you in your absence? Think about the salespeople. Think about the individual reputation that each salesperson wants to have. And I just think it's always fascinating to have that as a goal and to be able to implement that in your behavior, because that's how you really manage your behavior. I'm in the behavior modification business. You know, training is for horses and dogs, really. So I work with sales
people, sales managers, business owners on behavior modification and really incremental growth reinforced over time is the philosophy.
That's great. I think, too, the one thing I loved is all the things that you put out there is ways for us to be proactively working through our business. And, I think in a salesperson's world, a lot of companies end up becoming reactive because you wait for the complaint to come through, or worse yet, you wait for the results not be there for a month or two. And then you're coming down on the sales staff when we never really did anything to take steps to keep it moving in the direction we wanted to go.
Right. I mean, we really have to train the sales team on expectations, hold them accountable, and create consequences if they don't follow through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a couple minutes. Anybody with the last second question here?
I'm curious what people might have taken away, what they liked most. Rob mentioned a few things. Anybody want to chime in on what they took away or what they liked most?
I really like what Scott said about starting with a solution instead of I'm sorry. I called you wrong.
It's all right.
Starting out with the problem, not the solutions. We all kind of know our solutions, but we just don't know their problems. And that's really the fundamental of selling and marketing. Sorry, I got around for that.
No. Thank you, Terry. I wasn't sure if you were referring to lead to the solution instead of with the solution, or if you can work on a perfect fit and you're talking to a perfect fit and you can say, here are 3 things that we work with companies like yours. Can you relate to any of those? And if it's a perfect fit, it's relevant in the marketplace. It's relevant to what they're encountering. And they're going to go, you know my business.
Yeah.
You know more about me. How do you work with companies that are experiencing that? And now they're leaning in and they want to learn more. You've created the interest and curiosity just in that brief engagement, because you're dealing with a perfect fit. You're giving a scenario that they're possibly encountering. And now they're saying, you know my business. And you do, because you know the impact that your solution has on the problem that you solve, because you know the problem you solve. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you, Terry. Always great seeing you.
Yeah.
Well, we have some great presentation from Dan Arnold. Christine had to run, but she thanks you, and it's always good to hear from you as well, Scott.
Right. Thank you.
I would echo that. It's always great to get these great reminders and all this great content and in the right direction.
It was a blast. It was a blast being with you. It was great seeing everybody.
Well, thank you, Scott. Well, hopefully everybody stay safe out there. It's supposed to get a little sticky out this afternoon, but it is Minnesota and we're actually now in November, so winter's upon us.
We will survive.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate all the
All
words.
right.
And
thank you.
take care, everybody.
Thanks.